let me just tap in with her. 1 second. I just came from an event on the east side of Las Vegas doing some canvassing with our congressmen and assemblymen. So here we are. So that's why it's a little bit crazy. Let me just text Dr. Jones. But my phone is actually messed up too. All kinds of technological difficulties, okay? But I'm still thriving. All right. Just to see what you guys have to say. Well, thanks for your interest. All right. Let's see. Let me actually, let's give her a call. 1 second. It's because it's, oh, here she is. Yay, here she is. Hi, Dr. Jones. I just screen. We are live. So once I add you to the screen, you are going to be live on YouTube and Facebook.
I put a note saying we were running behind because that's what you said.
Okay. Yeah, I was able to make it home by the grace of God, child. My gas tank was on E, and I was like, do I stop at the gas or do I go home because I'm right here? So I just came here because it was too close. Like the least I can do is walk in, get it handled. But we have two guests today, Maria and Maisha. They are here for this conversation. Maisha's my cousin, and she says she's interested in what we have to say. Maria, can you share where you start advertisement at and how you found this event and or who you might know in CIC? And we'll jump right into it. Okay, she's not sure. What were you up to, Dr. Jones? Were you doing anything interesting this morning?
No. Just being
Nothing
prepared. Yeah, I was sleeping.
Yeah.
And then I got up.
You deserve rest, okay?
Okay.
What about last night?
The Olympics. Everything
Anything
is
fun
about
last
the Olympics. Night? Everything is about the Olympics. Okay. Thank you for being here, Maria, and other people that may join us. I heard that you were having a little conflict this morning, so I went on Facebook for those people who might be interested in viewing, so that they knew that we were running a little bit behind. But the good news is this is recorded, so it can be viewed at any time. So anytime you're ready, I can start.
Okay. Well, I want to introduce you to our guest. This is Dr. Carmen Jones. She graduated from a medical school in Chicago at the University of Peoria.
Illinois.
She has
University
been
of
in
Illinois.
medicine. University of Illinois, Peoria. And she has been in medicine for 30 years now. She started in the 90s. She is our Director of Medical Cannabis Voices for CEIC. And we are very happy to have her today. And she's going to talk about the endocannabinoid system and autoimmune disorders, including sickle cell anemia. So, all right, let's jump right in.
Okay, I am going to share my screen. And go from there. Give me 1 second here.
Okay, and I'm real.
Okay. Okay. Well, good morning again, everyone. This is number 4 in the series of 5 lectures given this July regarding using cannabis as medicine. And hold on here. Let me go back to the top. And today we're going to address the very complicated topic of our immune system. And based on some of the comments and questions that have occurred in the past couple of weeks, I made a few adjustments, hopefully, to clarify some things for those people who, um, want a little bit more in-depth information, and hopefully, again, further clarify information about the plant. So let's get started. A little background first, as always, in case this is your first time watching. For those of you who've seen the lecture, this is just a little repeat. Just to remind people that cannabis has been on this earth for many, many years, probably before we got here. But the first discovery uh, can be traced back to 10,000 years ago in China, um, used to make everything from, food to clothes. Fast forward to what I guess is considered modern day. It's only been 2,000 years. George Washington actually grew hemp in the colonies here. Really fast forward to only the early 1900s, probably even before, we always used cannabis as medicine in our society. It's only been since the modern day era where it has been vilified and ultimately criminalized. There was a marijuana tax placed in the early 1900s, 1937, uh, which ultimately led to uh, the war on drugs and the uh, origins of the DEA making marijuana controlled substance in the 1970s. And when they did that, this meant that cannabis was viewed as having no medical value at all, just like uh, heroin, LSD, and suggested that it was potential for high abuse. And we know that this was a political move, but it has plagued us to today. And thankfully, in 1996, California said enough and started allowing people to use cannabis as medicine. And all the way to today, all but 2 states have some form of cannabis laws on their books. And hopefully this year, we can get it off the schedule and decriminalize it federally. So, who's using cannabis today? Currently, the older adults and middle aged America are using cannabis a lot more likely than teens. And that's, if you think about it, that makes sense. The majority of um, patients who need it for medical purposes are older and have more medical problems. And I guess in a way that's kind of good. They're getting the benefit that they need. And teen use has been reported to be slowing down in general, despite the wider availability, which was obviously the concern for many people. So this is what it looks like in terms of what the plant itself looks like. These are 3 different varieties: indica, sativa, and ruderalis. You might have heard some of these names if you've ever tried to either talk to someone about it or even make a purchase yourself. But this is the variation of what they look like. What we have broadly put here is some generalities about their effects on the body. So the sativa tends to kind of be a pick me up, increases your focus, your creativity, your appetite. Whereas the indica version tends to help more with pain, anxiety, sleep, etc. This ruderalis is the one that doesn't get very much attention. They are doing some research out there trying to see if there's any medicinal value. However, right now it's it grows sort of wild and has a small amount of THC. And I guess we'll hear about it shortly if they can begin to find any uh, commercial use for it. So, what is hemp, you say? Because we heard a lot about that in the recent years because of the 2018 Farm Bill allowing hemp to be grown or be descheduled, therefore produced in the United States readily, and it is widely produced across the country now. So it is a kind of a, to simplify it, kind of a cousin of the marijuana plant as we know it. It's a sativa version, but the only difference, the main difference is its concentration of the psychoactive chemical called THC. So the long name is delta tetrahyd delta 9 tetrahydroxy cannabinol, and it is very prevalent in the regular plant that we know of as marijuana, but in the hemp plant, it contains less than 0.3% of that chemical, and thereby allowing um, those that are concerned to be worried much less about that particular side effect of the plant. However, the medicinal value remains because all the other chemicals, including one called CBD, cannabidiol, that you'll hear about more later, um, is plentiful, and many of its cousins, if you will. All right, so how does cannabis work in the body? So there's something called the endocannabinoid system. Those of you in the industry are very familiar with this. Those of you new to cannabis are learning and hearing about it first here. Uh, just like we have um, a cardiovascular system or neurological system and endocrine system, we have something called the endocannabinoid system. So in the introduction, um, I it was mentioned that I, was in school until the 90s. Well, apparently they while I was finishing up school, they were identifying this new system within the body. It's kind of phenomenal if you think about it. Um, what we are learning is that the endocannabinoid system helps play a role in regulating many of the natural processes that we need for our bodies to function, like our sleep, our mood, appetite, memory, and reproduction and fertility. So whether you need to use it or call on it or add to it or not, it doesn't matter. It's there, it works, it exists. And every day we're all learning more about what it does and how it works in the body to keep us balanced. This is a very simple schematic of what the system may look like. We know we have two types of we have identified two types of receptors. For simplicity, CB1 and CB2, and these are again a very simplistic schematic of the areas of the body that it can affect. I want you to take note that on both sides of this chart, you'll see the immune system, which we're talking about today. So both type 1 or CB1 and CB2 receptors interact with the immune system. Look at that beauty. That's the prettiest picture I could find. This is what it looks like looking down on it. And this center part in the middle is known in the industry as the flower or the bud. There's nice little shiny crystals all over the plants. And to be more specific, these are known as trichomes. And within the trichomes, the little crystals that you can see on this photo here, amplified, this is where the magic happens. This is where you'll find your what we call cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. That gives the um, individual characteristics of each plant. So, what are cannabinoids? The two most common ones are ones that I mentioned earlier: THC, which is for which causes the psychoactive effects in cannabis, and CBD, that most everyone has heard of by now. So these cannabinoids in, uh, interact directly with the receptors found throughout the endocannabinoid system. They regulate how we communicate, how cells communicate with each other, and there are over 120 known cannabinoids. So while we spend a lot of time focusing on THC and CBD, know that there are many others within the family of each of these major cannabinoids. Also, terpenes. That lovely picture is there to indicate all of the different types of fragrances, smells, spices, because terpenes are not only found in cannabis, but this is a um, part of the anatomy of the plant. So this allows it to have the special flavor and fragrance that it does. It's what makes each individual um, plant type unique. So we know that there's about 200 of those, not all of them identified, but that those, just like with aromatherapy, these terpenes add medicinal value to the plant as well. When you put it all together, they call that the entourage effect, the combination of the major cannabinoids like THC and CBD, the ones that give it flavor and fragrance like the terpenes, all working together. The flavonoids, oh, one more thing. Of all those 200, usually within the cannabis world, these are the most common uh, terpenes that are identified. There are, again, so many, but these are the ones that are often identified and tested, and that you'll see on your actual product label. And they, if you look in the middle column of effects, all have various different effects that are attributed to each of those terpenes. With regards to flavonoids, these are the part of the plant that cause their coloring. So we have identified in plant medicine in general that these are known as very powerful antioxidants. You might have even seen advertisements about eat the rainbow. And what that's referring to is when you put food on your plate, make sure it's not all brown or beige. Add some color to your plate. And this is suggesting the more color that you have on your plate, the more variety of antioxidants you have. And so you can see that it's not just found in regular foods, but it's also found in cannabis. That pretty picture that we had earlier of the plant that was purpley, that was because of flavonoids. I like this chart still because it kind of makes it a little easier to see how cannabis can be used as medicine based on your organ system. So, depending on your ailment, if you will, like if you have some inflammation or if you have pain, you can find what type of cannabinoids you should be using. So, it usually the chart can emphasize here that it usually shows a variety or a combination. It's not just a one type fits all. And this is important because a lot of times my colleagues will say, well, you can use CBD, but I don't want any THC. Well, again, it's a plant, so it all kind of works together. It's kind of very difficult to separate, um, you know, the cannabinoids out, as this chart emphasizes. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of it all. Understanding the immune system. This is a very complicated subject, and it was challenging for me to try to narrow things down. Our immune system is extremely complex, and it's throughout our whole bodies. It's what helps keep us alive. It helps protect us from foreign enemies called germs that can get into our system. This chart is simply to emphasize how complex it is. All of those little green squiggly lines throughout our body are part of what we call our lymphatic system, which plays a major role in our in protecting us. You may have heard someone mention a lymph node. Well, just like when you have your tonsils are swollen, um, those are part of your immune system. All right, words. I know there's a lot here, and this is a bit complicated, but we're going to go through it and we'll see how far we get. Anyway, when your immune system is working properly, um, it can tell your cells, again, which are supposed to be there and which ones are foreign. If there's a foreign element like a germ, like a virus or bacteria, um, it mobilizes what we call killer cells to go and attack it and make sure that the body is protected. Our bodies, as I heard recently, reminded us are beautifully and wonderfully made. And if we treat it right, it does what it's supposed to do. So that if we are exposed to something, um, it will go right away, call all of its buddies, and the killer attack cells will do its job. But if our immune system is not working properly, for whatever reason, um, we are somehow unable to mount that attack. And that would be the moment that we get sick, even if it's something as simple as a common cold. There are conditions, though, where our bodies overreact and or react improperly and accidentally attack us inappropriately. And that's what we refer to as autoimmune diseases. Another very complicated chart. So, common disorders that affect the immune conditions and disorders that affect the immune system. All right, so this is important, and the reason I put it there is because a lot of us can relate to many of these conditions listed. Um, so when you have allergies, that's your immune system not reacting properly, or sometimes overreacting. Autoimmune disorders, as I mentioned, I'm just going to go through the list. Um, Primary immunodeficiency diseases. These are usually inherited disorders and very rare. Infections, particularly like HIV and mono, they're well known. But we can add COVID to that because we're all very concerned about that in today's world. Um, Certain types of cancers affect the immune system. Sepsis. Sepsis is a word pretty much meaning overwhelming infection, and it can really take us down quickly if we have full body infection affecting most every organ. That would be the difference than a regular infection. And some medications, maybe you're on steroids because the doctor was trying to help calm down your allergies or any of these conditions that are listed above. Even the medicines we try to use to help can cause us to have a weakened immune system. And this is very common with people who are what we call immunosuppressed, the ones we're really worried about, again, in today's pandemic, with regards to their immune system being completely suppressed because maybe they had an organ transplant or maybe they have an autoimmune disorder that's just taken over and they need to have everything calmed down. Even, but that unfortunately, the side effect of that is they too are now at risk. All right, so let's talk about autoimmune disorders. Uh, these are, again, very complex disorders, but for the most part, they all share kind of a common set of symptoms, and they are listed here: fatigue, fever, joint pain, stiffness and swelling, sometimes chest pain, sometimes problems breathing, hair loss, headache, photosensitivity. That means sensitivity to light or sunlight in particular. And sometimes they'll even have a distinctive facial rash or even other body rashes. So there are more than 80 known types of autoimmune disorders. I have listed the top 14 here and some of their characteristics. This is not in order of prevalence. This is simply the most common that we know of. So, type 1 diabetes. Last week we talked about diabetes, and I briefly touched on the difference between type 1 and type 2. Type 2 is more your body's tired and is kind of petering out. Type 1, unfortunately, is an autoimmune situation where our own body attacks our insulin producing cells within the pancreas so that it doesn't even have a fighting chance. No insulin produced, the body can't process glucose as energy. So these people have no choice but to add supplemental insulin to their diets. Rheumatoid arthritis, very different than the arthritis that occurs as we age, which is known as osteoarthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is where our own immune system actually attacks the joints. And this can occur as young as in small children, in young children or adolescents, whereas the osteoarthritis or the arthritis as we age, is just that as we get older and as I call it, more crunchy. There's another type of arthritis called psoriatic arthritis, and this is closely related to what we know as psoriasis. And this is where our skin cells are uh, rapidly multiplying on top of each other, forming white, silvery plaques, little like blobs of skin, like someone threw it on there. And sometimes this can affect the joints as well. So, um, multiple sclerosis, lupus, inflammatory bowel disease, including Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, Addison's disease, which is affects the adrenal glands, causing abnormalities within our hormone production of cortisol our and some other hormones. I'll leave it at that. Graves' disease, Sjogren's syndrome, Hashimoto's, myasthenia gravis, autoimmune vasculitis, pernicious anemia, and celiac disease. Celiac disease is kind of important because everyone has decided gluten is bad, but for these people it can be very bad because they will have severe inflammatory reactions when they are exposed to gluten, as opposed to people using it as a dietary um, adjustment. So, again, very complex topic. If you are interested in this topic, it may be because you have or you know someone with one of these conditions. I would venture to guess we all do. We know someone in our life, in our family, that has one of these conditions because they are that prominent. All right, what do we do currently to treat these autoimmune conditions? So the possibilities are um, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. That would be your, ibuprofen or your naproxen, even your aspirin. Um, Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, um, meaning obviously two down from there, you see corticosteroids. Those are obviously another option. Anti-malarial drugs like that hydroxyquinone that we heard so much about during this pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic. Um, Immunosuppressants, um, very complicated. They use that a lot again with the organ transplant patients. And a new category called biologics. So these are a category of drugs where that were developed to sort of mimic what the natural immune reaction should be. And those a lot of people find success with those. Okay, so what about the cannabis for autoimmune conditions? So we learned a little bit, very, very little a bit earlier about the endocannabinoid system. So it is considered to be one of the gatekeepers of the immune system, preventing the onset of overwhelmingly inflammatory response in the disease. It also is known to have some influence on the immune cells itself. Remember, the endocannabinoid system is there to provide balance. That word homeostasis means balance in the body. And it can affect, as I just mentioned, messenger receptors, messengers, receptors, and enzymes within the system. Um, we learned about the CB1 and CB2 receptors, but we know that the primary receptors are, that affect the immune system are found in the CB2 system. Okay, so when we expose the body to cannabis from the outside. That's what that word means, exogenous cannabis use. Um, it can affect how the endocannabinoid system and our immune system react with each other. So our bodies can, again, make its own uh, cannabis, if you will. We have molecules that we know of that help our bodies work. When we use cannabis externally or from the plant source, they call that um, phytocannabinoids. That's complicated, I know, but the whole point is when we add cannabis to our bodies, it does exert an effect on our immune system, as it does in other systems that we've discussed previously. So, uh, this last statement on this page is talking about how a patient may have to deal with some of the negative side effects of medicines they have no choice but to take to control their condition. So, this person says cannabis helped them out significantly with their pain, not only and on an emotional level. So we know that cannabis can calm your anxiety, can provide some pain relief, and then that gave them periods of time where they can actually continue to deal with and fight their condition. Um, there's usually not a one fix. When you have complicated medical conditions, that usually requires complicated responses. So I I don't subscribe as a physician, excuse me. Excuse me. I don't subscribe to necessarily one thing is a fix for it all. You may have to have a combination of traditional medicine along with cannabinoid medicine, along with um, physical therapy or um, therapeutic massage, anything. But most people will do anything they can just to feel better. Okay, pros and cons. So I mentioned earlier that we definitely know that there's an interaction between the major cannabinoids like THC and CBD in um, uh, y- helping the immune system to fight. Um, and it does that mainly by inducing cellular death of some of the active cells in the immune system. It's not a bad thing when you have a flare of some condition that needs to be calmed down. That's the response you want. Both CBD and THC can do this. However, this could be a problem in some situations. So while less potential for inflammation may sound like a win, it can be associated with significant decrease in your white blood cell activity or functionality. And we know that we need white blood cells to live because white blood cells are part of that fighter killer cell team that will protect us from infections. So we have to find that balance. And that is sort of what I was trying to allude to earlier, where it may not be all fixed with just one thing. So, this is why it's really important to me that when lay persons are giving advice on how to use cannabis for a medical concern, they may not have the whole story. So, this is why to me it's important that you work with your physician, even if they don't necessarily want to work with you, or you find someone that you can work with regards to using cannabis as medicine, someone like me. Okay, we're going to move on to sickle cell. Um, we may not know as many people with sickle cell disease itself as we know of people with autoimmune conditions, and that's simply because it's less common, especially when referring to the full uh, disease itself. We may know some people with what we call sickle cell trait, but that is the genetic distinction of who is able to pass on the genes that can cause the disease. But the disease is very serious. So, as you see on this picture, these are normal red blood cells there in the middle. and those are sickle cells on the right. This is important because as our blood courses through our system, it delivers oxygen to our organs, picks it up in the lungs, and drops it off in our organs. And if it cannot have safe and effective passage, then we have a problem. And that's what this schematic shows here. Healthy red blood cells, round, move through small blood vessels to carry oxygen to all parts of our bodies. But someone who has sickle cell uh, or C-shaped, sickle refers to uh, I guess like a curved machete. I don't know if that helps anyone, but that's where the name comes from. Um, it gets stuck there. So the sickle cells not only are ineffective because of their shape, but they don't live long and they don't carry as much oxygen, and they can get stuck in the flow of the blood, causing very serious problems, including infection, what they call acute chest syndrome, meaning it's all trapped, it got trapped in our lungs, and then ultimately stroke. But the most common symptom is pain. These patients suffer greatly from pain as they're having one of these crises, especially. So, how do you treat sickle cell with medical marijuana or cannabis? And I guess the answer is the same as we have learned in the past, that cannabis can help with pain. And patients who use cannabis who have sickle cell have found that it can definitely help relieve their pain. This is a problem because a lot of times their pain is not evident. They can't always see it. They can't always quantify it, especially if it's occurring in a child. It becomes a really complicated decision on how to help that child, especially. Um, but what we know is medical marijuana or cannabis can help to block the pain receptors. It can help treat the inflammation. It can help calm someone down because anxiety is a significant component to this illness. If you're scared, you're going to hurt because you know it's going to happen. You can actually exacerbate the condition. And the cannabis, at the very least, can help to calm the patient down while they're being treated. All right. And I am actually at the end of the lecture, leaving a little bit of time for some questions. Um, I will continue to put this chart up because we need to be reminded of how we should be eating and we should be eating. So, this is my phrase: if God made it, eat it. I'm referring to decreasing the amount of processed foods we put in our bodies and encouraging people, including myself, to eat more whole foods, real foods, natural foods, foods of many different colors, as indicated on this beautiful photo. And of course, don't forget to work it out as best as you can. Keep moving. Um, this is a cornerstone of keeping healthy. Of course, don't forget to hydrate. We all should be drinking half of our body weight in ounces of water every day. It is a chore. It can be a challenge. However, every day, start over and do it again. And finally, let's not forget to be mindful. It is important for us to take care of not only our physical health, but our mental health. And so every day we need to have some time, take some time to be quiet, be peaceful, and most importantly, um, be mindful. All right, I want to remind people that as technology advances, we are learning more, not only about our our bodies, how it interacts with cannabis, but from a genetic standpoint. There's a test now where you can see how your body interacts with cannabis based on what your genetics say. So if this is something that interests you, you can contact me and I will be happy to talk more about this. This is important, especially for people who have trouble deciding or understanding what kind of cannabis they need. From a genetic standpoint, this tells you about how your body can process cannabis. You know, I always find it fascinating that there are people, the Snoop Dogs of the world who can smoke cannabis all day long and go run, a Fortune 500 company. And then there are others who may try to use the tiniest bit and they'll be asleep for 10 hours. Well, that's all in our genetics. So this is helpful for those people. All right. Finally, too, what happens when I go to the store? What do I buy? Um, the dispensaries have everything in it from, as I usually say, nasal sprays to suppositories. So, however you choose to consume the cannabis is up to you. Just know that you have a choice. You do not have to smoke it. It is probably not best anyway, although I can tell you that some people, particularly those who have pain, need to use something that's quick, fast, and in a hurry, and inhaling it is the fastest way to get it to work. The most, uh, second most the second quickest way is through the tinctures or lozenges. Sometimes you can get that into the bloodstream a little bit more quickly than if you swallow it, where it has to go through the entire GI system before it gets into your bloodstream. But just a busy chart to remind you that there are different time constraints on when the medicine will become active in your body, in your system. I like this app for people who are trying different types of cannabis for a medical condition. If you want to keep track of um, what you're using, um, and don't remember the side effect, or this one really worked good, or I like this one better in the morning, use this app. It can help you. So, what's the future? Well, I certainly hope cannabis is decriminalized and removed from the schedule this year. It's crazy. We have 18 states now allowing patients to just walk into a dispensary and make a purchase. So, hopefully, um, this year we'll get it done. These guys think they can make it happen. Last week, sorry, 2 weeks ago, they started the process of descheduling cannabis. So hopefully they can get it done. And finally, weed is from the earth. God put this here for me and for you. Take advantage, man. Take advantage. Social media contacts. And again, I thank you for your attention and I thank you for the invitation. I will stop sharing the screen as soon as I figure out how to do that again. There we go. Okay.
All
What's that?
right. That was very informative. Thank you, Dr. Jones. Um, I keep forgetting to put on our post. I just put one up. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into questions since we don't have much time. Oh, Maria says she has to go. Okay, I'm sorry. I will have to leave now. Thanks for sharing the knowledge. All right. Well, we're happy that she attended. She said she found us on Eventbrite, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's great news. But Maisha is still with us. Maisha, let us know if you have any questions. I have a question. I can jump right into mine while Maisha gets ready. Mm. So my question is, what kind of what kind of medical aid would cannabis be to someone with autoimmune disorder? Would it be better for it to be used in a preventative way or to manage autoimmune? I guess that's my question. Is it, or
So
is there even a
I'm sorry, you broke up at the last minute. What's the last part of it? Or is there even what?
or is there even a distinction? Like,
Okay.
is it that distinct?
I guess that's going to depend on the person. So most people who have decided to use cannabis as medicine are using it regularly. And that means they are using it preventatively. And I think they find quite a bit of success. You may not realize it, but there's a couple of people within our own organization who have autoimmune disorders. And again, without naming any names, they use it preventatively and regularly and um, copiously, so that they don't have to use any pharmaceuticals because they were on one of these. One of the people that I'm referring to was at one point on 8 different pharmaceuticals, and now they are on zero
Oh,
and
wow.
only use cannabis to help them. And we have another person affiliated with our organization that um, not only uses cannabis but aromatherapy, um, therapeutic massage, lymphatic massage, all sorts of these other natural things just to try to get off of as many pharmaceuticals. But unfortunately, that's not the case for everyone. That same person at some point did have to go back to using some form of a pharmaceutical because their condition was overwhelming. So it's always going to be about balance. I do not at all recommend, someone just going off of pharmaceuticals that are helping them for the sake of using cannabis only. I would always ask that people be patient with themselves. There's a way that they can do it. Um, and always along with their primary physician, whether it be their, endocrinologist or rheumatologist, whatever. Mm.
Oh, I'm just adding Maisha. Maisha, to the stream so you can ask a question. I'm sorry.
I can't hear her.
Now?
Yes.
Oh, you got.
Okay.
Oh, yep. Now you're good.
Yeah. Okay. I tuned in because I saw it on Instagram by Naoka, and it was talking about autoimmune disease, and I have lupus. And I've always been told like you should try cannabis, but I've never been interested. So I tuned in to see like what you had to say, and then I was reading on the slides, and it looked like indica would be better for me with lupus. So like, what's the main difference between indica and sativa?
So if you remember in the very beginning of the lecture, I know it's a lot of complicated information,
Hmm.
especially for the person who isn't familiar or doesn't hear it every day, all day. So the main difference is plant type. And one of those early charts showed um, 3 different types of
Yep.
plants, the way they look.
Look. Hmm.
And so one is one of those plants is going to provide this set of responses in the body, and the other plant is going to provide this set of responses. Um, both of them contain different amounts of THC and CBD, but there are so many varieties that we don't tend to, when we're talking medicinally, we tend not to discuss indica and sativa in terms of what you need. We go further, deeper into those terpenes. What characteristics are we mostly looking for that particular medical condition?
Okay.
So sometimes, let's say you would like both of them have THC in it and can help alleviate pain. Let's say you can't afford to be sleep all day. You got to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So you have THC in the sativa and in the indica, but one will make you, these are generalizations. One can make you, allow you to stay awake, and the other will likely put you to sleep.
Sleep.
So again, generalizations. That app that I mentioned, the
At the
tetragram,
end, yeah.
yeah, that's what happens that's what's going to help you keep track. So let's say you decide, I want to try this particular one, and it's got this funny name. When you go in there, they all have funny names to the cannabis plants.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's got this funny name, and I took it and I fell asleep and I didn't wake up for 2 days. I don't need that one,
Mm-hmm.
But this one, man, I cleaned the oven. I did all the vacuuming, and I had no pain.
Uh-huh.
So it will keep you keep you keep help you keep track of what to do. I just noticed this background. I wish they had let me put up a screen. Did my dogs come in and out of the door while I was talking?
I didn't see. No.
Okay. All right. Does that
I
answer
didn't
your
see it.
question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. That's the only question you have, especially since
Okay.
you just talked to us about lupus.
What about oil versus inhaling and using like the oil, I guess, on your tongue, I guess I heard before.
So, thank you. I love that question because a lot of people do not smoke. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to smoke. They don't know how to smoke.
Yeah, that's me.
Um,
I don't know how.
and that's fine. The method of using a tincture or even a lozenge typically is used under your tongue. And that's because if you lift up your tongue, you'll see tons of veins
Mm-hmm.
and arteries and that smooth, shiny, what we call mucosal surface. Those are very permeable. So you put the drops under the tongue for approximately 20, 30 seconds, and you have effect within 10 to 20 minutes versus if you eat it,
Yeah.
and that can take 40 minutes to 2 hours depending on your GI system
Mm-hmm.
because it has to go through there
Mm-hmm.
first. If you smoke it, it's almost immediate. So for people who have, like sickle cell, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
those people are in horrible pain and they need immediate relief. They probably don't smoke it either because of their lungs, but
Mm-hmm.
my point is the same. They need immediate relief, and they tend to want to inhale it so that they can not hurt right now.
Right now. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for your questions. Thank you for your attention.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the
You're
information.
welcome. You're welcome. Okay, you have another question?
Gotcha. Well, we might as well just. Oh, have another. I did, but I'm gonna hold it until the next cannabis because question, and I had to head to the next event. But I do want to say, make sure anyone who's out there listening or who may catch this in the future, follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. More cannabis medicine lectures. We have one more. There's regroup and relaunch according to, Dr. Jones, if she's still interested, and just continue servicing the community by putting health making sure health is a part of the conversation in cannabis. Something that Dr. Jones is very passionate about. So we are very happy to be producing this event with her. She's very informed, and she's very passionate about this industry really becoming more shaped and more accessible and really a real thing, really instituted in a way that people who are dealing with complicated medical issues and things like that. So, any last words, Dr. Jones, before we close out?
No, only to say that the answer should have been yes. Only to say that these are really complicated conditions and situations we're talking about. All of the things that we've talked about up to now are so very complicated. And I just want people to remember that as they embark on their cannabis journey. And that what I specialize in is that helping patients who have complicated medical conditions learn to use cannabis as medicine versus the simple ache or pain that you can just go in and talk to your everyday bud tender about. I got back pain and that's it. Okay, great. These, most of the time, I'm talking to people with 3, 4, 5, 6 different conditions at a time, trying to work with them. So if that's you, please book your appointment and we'll learn together on how to take care of you individually. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I love that. I love having Dr. Jones accessible. I just think it's great. And I really hope people, take advantage because it's not every day you meet a doctor who's been practicing for 30 years, that's interested in cannabis, interested in complicated medical histories. That's where her main focus is. And we definitely need people like her, on the front line in our communities taking care of us. So take advantage. You can find her blasted all over our social media pages to access social media, keep up with her, keep up with our business as it continues to grow. And until next time, we will see you next Saturday at Cannabis is Medicine for male and female issues. So we will be covering that next Saturday at 10.
Final lecture.
Our final lecture for this run. So we'll see. All right, ending the live. Okay. Hold on, it's not yet. I don't think. And of course, my computer is a little slow. All right. I think we're not live anymore because I don't think it's counting. It's not counting anymore.
I see a counter. Mine is still counting.
Oh, is it still counting?